Chairman, and I do want to thank you for, I called you this morning, and as you're well aware, I'm the ranking member on Armed Services, and we have another hearing taking place at the same time, but this is too important not to participate in, so I thank you very much, and I will be going back and forth. Thank you for holding the hearing. I'm disappointed we don't have administration officials here. I anticipated that we would early on, but we don't. Around the same time that the President gave his speech on global warming last month, his campaign team developed a talking points memo that was crafted to provide alarmists around the country with specific instructions about how they should talk about global warming. The President wants everyone to be on the same page. He's tested and tried these talking points on focus groups and even has come up with a list of do's and don'ts, which they're putting up behind us, do's and don'ts when talking about climate change, which you can see in the chart behind me. Now, these talking points are not honest or straightforward. They're purely political. In the memo's first point, it says, it says, do not lead with straight economic arguments. The President makes it clear that he doesn't want anyone talking about the cost of taking action to stop global warming. And we know exactly why. Whether it's legislation or regulation, any action to reduce greenhouse gases is going to cost the economy at least $300 to $400 billion a year. And we've used this figure now for quite some time. It's rather interesting because when they first came out, it was a Wharton figure. Later on, MIT and I think Charles Rivers and others came up. Now that is a figure that is tied to the a cap and trade bill. Now instead, the president instructs alarmists to, quote, talk about how climate change is harming America now and about, quote, real impacts including asthma attacks and extreme weather events like hurricanes and tornadoes. But claiming global warming is causing extreme weather is wrong, and even President Obama's nominees disagree with him. Allison McFarland, who was nominated by the President to be chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and testified before this committee just a few weeks ago when she was asked about whether she thought the tornadoes in Oklahoma or the Hurricane Sandy were extreme weather events. She said, I would not call these events extreme. I would call them normal. Most meteorologists agree. A recent study by George Mason University reported that 63% of weathercasters believe that any global warming that occurs is a result of natural variation and not human activities. That is a significant 2-to-1 margin. Now, given this, we're lucky one of our distinguished panelists, which I hope I'll come back, Dr. Cullen, to ask a few questions of you, is not in charge. I'm kind of glad you're not in charge of the meteorological licenses. If so, then 63% of them would be fired. You once said, or she once said, I should say, in the opening statement, if a meteorologist can't speak to the fundamental science of climate change and that it's man-made, then maybe the American Meteorological Society should not give them a seal of approval. That would mean that meteorologists like Aaron Tuttle in Oklahoma City would be out of a job. He doesn't believe in man-made global warming, but he regularly saves Oklahoma lives by predicting when and where tornadoes will strike, which helps people know exactly when they need to take cover during severe storms. And even though the President's talking points instruct alarmists not to, quote, debate the validity or consensus of the science that is already settled, more and more reports are surfacing all the time that show that science is not settled. In March, The Economist reported that, quote, over the past 15 years, air temperatures and the Earth's surface has been flat, while greenhouse gas emissions have continued to soar. And just this past week, Harvard and the Forest Service came out with a study that shows trees are growing faster and using less water with higher atmospheric concentrations of CO2. This is the opposite of what scientists expected before. But the alarmists can't talk about it because they've received their instructions from the President. The President's talking points demonstrate that he's only interested in achieving his desired political outcome, whatever the cost. Now, why do they want to do this? We all remember what Richard Lindzen said, and I've quoted it many times. I think it's very difficult for anyone to criticize Richard Lindzen. He's the atmospheric physicist at MIT. He said that regulating carbon is a bureaucrat's dream, because if you control carbon, you control life. And when you zoom out and consider this from a distance, it is a core tenet of liberalism as the president's political philosophy. He believes that the government can make better decisions than the people. And I think I do applaud you for having this hearing,
Thanks.
Madam Chairman. I think it's a lot of theater here, but it's going to be fun, and we can get back and start talking about it again. By the way, it is interesting.
Your time is up, but
we have
I
never had
love the
a bill
theater. Is this the
passed on
second act?
Captain Great.
Is this the second act?
I'm sorry?
I said, are you giving us a second act? Anyway, I'm glad you
Act
came.
2, that's right.
I'm glad you came, because I don't think this is theater. I think this is deadly serious. I appreciate that you have the same song you've had all along. I don't know what it'll take to convince you, but I'm going to keep on trying.
Well, that's
All right.
good. And let me respond to that.
Please do.
And
I
would
would
only say that
feel good if you
there
didn't
has
respond.
been time in the last 12 years. I can't tell you how many bills have been introduced in the House and the Senate. Not one has passed the United States Senate, which is the more liberal branch of the two houses. And I don't think today you could get 35 votes out of the United States Senate for a cap and trade bill. So that
Well, we're not
to me,
discussing
tells
that,
the
okay?
story,
Let's
Madam
not get
Chairman.
into cap and trade. All I'm saying, and this will be the last word before I call on Senator Hirona, is this. I don't know what it will take to convince you and the deniers of what's out the window.
It's not just
Senator,
me, it's
Senator
it's
Hirona.
two-thirds of the United States Senate.
Senator Hirona.
Thank you, Chairman Boxer and Ranking Member Vitterth, for scheduling today's hearing. This is my first hearing.